I had the pleasure of speaking with Lauren Allen today. Lauren Allen is a former sugar addict turned certified nutrition coach. She helps women with PCOS and hormone imbalances get pregnant naturally. After healing her own body and getting pregnant naturally after doctors said it would be impossible, she now shows other people how to do the same. Lauren created an extremely successful business here in Israel, and it was absolutely a pleasure and honor to have her on to speak about everything that she does and pregnancy in Israel. Lauren Allen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So originally I met you in college. You were like, I think 3 years above me or 2 years above me.
What year did you graduate? I'm class of 2018.
So I'm 2020. So 2 years.
Okay, 2 years.
So yeah, you were studying psychology and I was
Yes.
also studying psychology, and I feel like you definitely had all the good notes and everyone was like, oh, I know this girl from like 2 years above and she like has really good notes.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like that kind of plays to who you are now, like very organized, very smart, very good.
That's what they say, maybe. But yes, I take good notes. And I was in psychology and IDC. I remember we were probably like overlapping in carpools to get to school.
We both lived in Givat Shmuel,
Yes.
and then Reichman, which is now it's called Reichman, was in Herzliya. And Givat Shmuel was where I guess all the religious people lived at the time.
Yeah.
And now, thank God, Herzliya is a thriving religious community.
I know, it's so crazy. I'm like, if I moved now, I would have had a whole different story because I'm sure I would have lived in Herzliya. But yeah, it's cool to see.
Insane. So how did you even get to Reichman? Like, take me back to your whole story.
Okay, so I'll give the background. I'm from Scarsdale, New York, Westchester. I know you're California, so I don't know if that means anything to you.
Not much, but I can.
But like your classic modern Orthodox community in New York, and I never in a million years thought I would end up studying in Israel. Actually, when I was a senior in high school, I applied early decision, went to look at colleges. I would say college was also like just a big part of what I was looking forward to and very excited. It was very, very important, like in my family, in the high school that I went to. And I ended up deciding I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, which when I went to visit, I was like, this is the place for me. I fell in love with it. I could like visualize my whole college experience and just like I loved it. The brick buildings with the Ivy and sorority life. I was just like, I can't wait.
It's an Ivy League, right?
It's not technically, but don't worry, I'll remind you, it's in the top 15 schools, or at least it was in like 2013.
Wow.
My brother went to Cornell, and I was like, I just want you to always remember Hopkins is ranked higher than Cornell.
Oh wow, yeah, that's
because
important.
that's how I am as a little sister. But yeah, and like that was my plan. And then I came to Israel for a gap year, as pretty much everybody also in my high school and like, you know, all my friends did. And I ended up just having a very surprising year for myself and most people who knew me, and just totally was like, wait a second. I think all these things that I thought I always wanted, I don't know, like, why did I want those things? Maybe it was just because that's what people had told me, or that's what was kind of expected of me. And being exposed to life here and just spending the year here, I was like, wait a second, I actually think my future is here, which was very scary. I know for some people they grow up, and my family is definitely Zionistic, but like I didn't grow up going to Bnei Akiva camps. I didn't know a lot of people who moved to Israel. So it was definitely never something on my horizon. It was like, you know, we'd come for vacation a couple of times or like a holiday once, but it wasn't like on my horizon to move to Israel. But mid-year of my gap year, I decided I think I want to do this. My parents were like, absolutely not. And they're like, and what's your plan? I was like, I don't know, maybe Shana Bet. They're like, yeah, no.
Okay.
So I came home after the year. I did my semester at Johns Hopkins. And the whole time I was there, I was like plotting, how am I going to get back to Israel? What's going to be the right school for me? I ended up deciding on Reichman, or at the time it was called IDC, and really made a proper plan and presented it to my parents. And I was like, no, I'm serious about this. I really want to be there. That's where my future is. And they were like, okay. And I had an amazing time there. I'm actually so glad that I had that semester, because it also gave me time to realize like this wasn't just a fleeting feeling. I think sometimes people can get caught up in the emotions of their gap year, but I was like, no, this is really what I want. And I also have no regrets. Like I never look back and think, well, what could have been? Because I had it. I had my college experience. I loved it. It was amazing. I don't regret a second of it. And I'm also like, yeah. And that was a chapter that I wanted to be really short, because I knew that my future was really here. So in February of 2015, I had a one-way plane ticket. I came here. I had zero friends, zero family here. I kind of don't know what I was thinking, but I was like 19 and just, saying, okay, I'm going to come here for college, at least for now. I knew in my heart I would probably be making Aliyah at some point, but I was like, for right now, I was telling my parents also, it's just for college. It's like I'm doing a really long study abroad. And once I got here, just, I don't know, like life started to build and I made friends and I settled into my community. And a few months after moving here, I think 4 months after I moved here, I met my husband.
Wow.
Which was like such a bracha and very easy. It was like a very easy part of my journey. And he has a lot of family here, so that also made it much easier. And yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Wow. That's so difficult. I feel like for, at least in my journey also, and maybe other people can relate to this too, that I feel like Israel just pulls you in such an emotional way. And sometimes it's not always practical. And for my parents, they also wanted such a practical plan to see like how everything was going to look. They wanted like a 10-year plan in advance. And it's really hard to do that because in Israel, it's just such a go with the flow culture. Like you only get accepted to college like 2 months before it actually starts, if that.
Yes, but I also felt like once I saw that my future was here, it made no practical sense to spend all of this time. And listen, college in the United States is so expensive. Like Hopkins is a private university. It's really expensive. Yeah. I told part of how I presented it to my parents, I made like pie charts and graphs. I was like, you could send me to IDC or Reichman and I could fly home 9 times a year for the same amount that one semester at Johns Hopkins is going to cost you. And they were like, yeah, we really can't argue with that.
Right.
So that was like part of how I kind of, proposed it to them. And then also, if you're going to be here, to come when you're 19. I mean, I don't know how your experience was. For me, I was like, this is the best.
Yeah.
I met so many people. It was so much easier to network when it did come time for like looking for a job and just
I agree.
Establishing yourself as a young adult here. You kind of learn the system once. Like I didn't know anything about healthcare at all, let alone in America or in Israel. Yeah. You have to learn it at some point when you start getting older and start doing things more independently. So I just learned all of that here. Like I opened up a bank account here. I didn't really know how to do that in America either. So yes, some of the practical pieces were like, seemed harder, but I actually didn't feel like it was so hard. I think I came at a time in life. I always say I'm so grateful I came when I did because it was mostly fun. That time was such a fun, social, like I would go on buses all the time to Jerusalem, to here, to there, like always going out with friends, things going on every night because you're in college and that's what people do. Whereas if I came now at 31, I'd be like, no, I was telling you before, I go to bed at 9 o'clock. Like I'm not going out. That's insane. So I'm so grateful I came at that time and it ended up, I think, actually feeling very easy to come at that point in life.
I completely agree. I always say that I think the best age to come is like 18, 19 after your gap year or even in place of a gap year, that it makes it all of your years, not just a gap year. And I agree. I think it's so much easier to come. So yeah. So, okay. So you met your husband and at what point, and you got married, and can you tell me about your life and your business from there?
Yeah. So I did psychology in Reichman, and then I was like not exactly sure what I wanted to do. I knew I would probably end up doing something working with people, but I wasn't sure my direction. So I said, what should I do after school? I started teaching, which I've always loved kids, and I knew I was really good at teaching. I really loved it. I loved my students, but I also knew it was like a placeholder and it wasn't for forever. Within, like a year after we got married, we started trying to get pregnant, and I knew very early on in that journey that something was just off. I don't know how to explain it. It was a gut feeling, but the more I started looking into it, I was like, something is definitely off. And as the months went by, it became harder and harder. I also started noticing my cycles were very wacky, and I started trying to, do ovulation tests and all these things. And I was like, nothing is making sense. I'm getting a million positives. Why am I not getting pregnant? And every single cycle that either I saw a negative pregnancy test or I ended up getting my period, I was distraught. Like I was heartbroken. I was really not handling it well. And I was just afraid, like, what if this never happens for me? And again, my whole life, one thing I really have always known is I want to be a mom. I love kids. My favorite thing ever was like being a camp counselor, and just that always felt so natural to me. Teaching was so natural to me. I love kids so much. And I was like, wait, what if this doesn't happen? I thought, okay, like I had this bit of a surprise left turn in life that I ended up moving to Israel, but a lot of other things, you know, like I went to school, I met my husband, got married, was kind of following that very common life path that a lot of people take. And this was the first time also where I felt like, you know, I'm not getting what I really want. I'm the type of person, I will work so hard if I care about something. I will put in the work, I will put in the time, I will put in the effort. You know, you were saying before, like you got your notes from me. I was like, yeah, if a class is hard for me, so study harder and put yourself in and put in more effort and you will achieve as long as you try hard. And this was the first time in my life really where I was like, I am working so hard and trying so hard to make this happen. And I just don't understand what is wrong with me, what's wrong with my body. And I would spiral like something's wrong with me. So as we were coming up on, you know, more and more months of this happening, I went to the doctor, you know, as again, I'm a very like by the books person. I went to my doctor. She said, everything's fine. I was like, okay.
Why? How could she say that? Like, what did she do?
Don't know. They just said, you're young. Oh, you know, we have these long cycles. Sometimes it's normal. You're thin. You're healthy. We have no other signs that anything is wrong. Meanwhile, they didn't do blood work. Like they didn't actually check anything. So I said, let me go get a second opinion. I was in New York at that time for the summer. So I was like, let me see a doctor here. Highly recommended OBGYN. Same thing. You're normal. You're young. You're healthy. Don't worry. Finally, it had been over a year. And then once it's been a year of trying to get pregnant, that's typically when you'll get referred to a fertility specialist. So I was happy at that point. I'm like, maybe someone will take me seriously now because I know something is wrong. Yeah. And also at this point, you know, a lot of friends were announcing pregnancies or having babies. And that was a very difficult part of the journey for me. Like I really found it so hard to be happy for other people when I was like, I want it so desperately and I just don't understand why it's not happening.
How did you deal with that?
Badly. I would cry. I would cry in public. I would cry at home. I had friends that like, if they even just texted me, hey, you know, sometimes you get a message from someone that's like, hey, and they're like, oh my God, is that going to be a pregnancy announcement? Right. I just wouldn't answer them. I was like, I can't, my heart can't take it. And I say this also, I work with a lot of women in this space who are amazing and they handle it really well. Like there are some special people out there who they have the ability to have the joy for other people and keep their own sadness separate. And I just also know there's a lot of people who can't do that out there. And I will speak very honestly about it. I did not handle it well. I tried. My husband was amazing. He was really, really supportive and always just like pushing me to be the better version of myself. And like there would be things I'm like, I'm not going to that bris. I'm not bringing that person to meal train. He's like, this is not who you are. You can do it. Like he was very encouraging and supportive. But I didn't handle it well. And the thing that ultimately helped me was getting pregnant and ending that chapter of my life because it was so hard. But before that happens, we ended up getting basically referred to a fertility specialist who right away looked at blood work, looked at an ultrasound and said, you have PCOS, which has now actually recently been renamed to PMOS. And I was like, what? Like, what are all these letters? What are you talking about? I'm young. I'm healthy. Like I said before, you know, there was no obvious reason I should have had any trouble getting pregnant. And that even made me more nervous. Like, why is a young, healthy person having so much trouble? And they explained to me basically, you know, it means this thing. You don't ovulate regularly. And there's all this stuff going on in your ovaries, but don't worry, you're a really good candidate for fertility treatments. So we're going to get you started with that process. And I was like, okay, great. Like, give me the prescription. Let's go. Like, I need the baby in 9 months. They're like, no, that's not actually how it works. We have to do some preliminary testing and look at this and make the appointment. And it has to be around your cycle. And I just left that appointment being like, I literally was, it's so naive. I was on the way to that appointment calculating a due date. Like maybe if I get the prescription for whatever from this appointment, then okay, in 9 months I could have a baby. And I was like, we're starting actually a very long road that also they explained to me, you know, we want to go over the risks and the statistics with you. Like it doesn't always work. And that also just, it was a different time. I know it sounds so crazy to say 7 years ago, people did not talk about fertility treatments the way they talk about it now on social media. People are so open about their journeys and their stories, especially when it doesn't work. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't talk to this about any friends. I didn't know people who had really gone through it and talked about it openly. So I was like, what do you mean you're going to give me the medicine and it doesn't work sometimes? They're like, yeah, it works about 30% of the time to do, you know, ovulation inducing drugs. And if that doesn't work, we typically move on to IUI. And if that doesn't work, we typically move on to IVF. And I was like, wait, this could take months. This could take years. I was just like heartbroken. At the same time, I was like, at least we're on the path. We're being proactive. So we went home from that appointment. I start Googling everything I can. I go down rabbit holes on Google about PCOS. And I came across all this information that actually the way that you eat really impacts your hormones and your cycle, and it can actually help you get pregnant. And at the time also, I didn't give this as background, I was not a healthy eater. I call myself like a recovered sugar addict. I have the biggest sweet tooth. I love sweets. I loved baking. That was also a huge way I actually did deal with and cope with how challenging that time was I would do these really intense baking projects. I loved like French pastry cooking, and I'm such a foodie, like go to anywhere in Israel. Let me try every chocolate souffle from every dairy cafe in Israel. Like that's what I did as my hobby. And I was like, I can't eat healthy. Like I don't know how. And that's so not my personality. And I'm very picky. But at the same time, like I just don't know what's going to happen with these appointments, and we have to wait so long. So what do I have to lose? Let me at least try while, we're waiting. So I did a complete 180 on my diet. Instead of eating like cookies for breakfast and croissants for lunch and pizza for dinner. That's literally how I ate. Because also I've been thin my whole life, and I just thought, okay, great, I could eat whatever I want because I don't gain weight. And that's the only reason people would eat healthy, right? Is
Right.
if they're trying to diet and lose weight. But I started eating really healthy, and all of these things started to change within a couple of weeks. The first week was horrible. I had like sugar withdrawal. I was really cranky. I had headaches. I had like literal withdrawal symptoms. But then the second week I was like, wait, I have so much more energy. Like, oh, that's cool. Maybe this is like impacting how I feel.
What were you eating? What was the difference?
I was eating like just tons of protein and vegetables and whole nourishing foods, a lot of like colors on my plate, trying to get in a lot of fiber, a lot of foods I had never eaten before in my life. Like the only vegetable I really ate was cucumbers. So I started like making salads and having, sweet potato and like trying new things. I tried lentils and beans and all these and beets and acorn squash and all these different veggies, which I ended up liking. I actually really like a lot of new foods now. So I tried to also take the foodie part of me and be like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's make really fun meals and, get into cooking and have fun with it. But then as the week started to go on, I really started noticing a change in how I felt before anything related to fertility. So I also always had skin issues. I had a lot of eczema. I was always using one steroid cream or another. And I literally woke up 2 weeks into this and I was like, my face is different. My skin is clear. I don't have eczema. And I can feel when it's the cream worked versus it's not there. I don't know how to explain it, but you feel it if you have it. And I was just like, my face is so much less inflamed. Cool. I don't need my eczema cream anymore. And then the next week, I remembered I was driving to work. I remembered it so clearly. I had anxiety also. From the time I was 17, I was diagnosed with anxiety. It was just a part of my life. I had been on and off medication. It was just part of me, and I accepted it. I was just at a point where I was like, this is very normal. Lots of people have it. Fine, it's part of me. And I just felt like I don't have anxiety. Again, it sounds crazy to say, but I was always just kind of on edge. That little things could make me feel set off, make me feel much closer to panicking or having a panic attack. And I was like, I don't feel that. I just feel so regulated, not because of any tools, not therapy, not anything, just my baseline feels different. And I was like, that's okay. Maybe it's just a weird fluke. Sometimes you have good days. Sometimes you have bad days, with anxiety. Right. And that just kept on continuing. I was like, maybe anxiety is actually not a part of me or my personality. Maybe it had to do with the way I was eating. And as I was also making all these changes, I was learning more about nutrition, learning more about how it affects our hormones, our mental health, your cycles. And I was like, this is crazy because it sounds so woo-woo and it's so not my personality to be into any alternative anything, but I feel it. I cannot deny I feel the difference. And my husband also was like, you're glowing, you're thriving, you feel, you're so happy. And I was still struggling with the infertility at this point. Then I got my period and I was like, wait a second. I've been having these crazy long cycles, 60 days, sometimes more than that, sometimes a little less than that. And I got my period after 35 days. So at that point, it was like, okay, we could call the fertility clinic. We could start the first round of treatments. And I just had this voice inside of me that was like, you're responding so well to this. Just maybe take one more month. I thought it was going to at least be another month before I got my period. So I was like, let me just wait one more time. We'll see what happens. And I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter on that cycle. And once that happened, I was like, why is no one talking about this? Women need to know about this because I'm going to guess I'm probably not the only person struggling. So I said, okay, let me just, when I'm ready, I'm going to share about it. I think I was in the 3rd trimester. at that point on Instagram, only friends and family followed me. Just I did like foodie things around Israel, my baking, my going to restaurants, whatever. And I was like, I just want people to know this is what we've been struggling with. I have this thing called PCOS, and changing my diet has changed my life, and it helped me get pregnant. And I had, which at the time it felt like a lot because I didn't have so many like followers, and it was all just people who knew me. 30 people reached out to me being like, I have this. I've been struggling to get pregnant. I've been struggling with fertility. Tell me what you did. Teach me. I want to know everything. And I was like, okay, so I need to get certified in this so that I could teach it to women. I don't think I'm going to build like a career out of it. I'm just so passionate about it now because it changed my life.
What were you doing for work at the time?
I was teaching English.
Wow. So how were you able to kind of take all this time to research and learn about it?
So it was COVID, which also just changed the whole landscape of the world and also gave me a lot of time to like deal with this privately. But I used to teach in person from, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then our hours were just totally cut. I was teaching like 3 45-minute Zoom classes a day.
Wow.
So I had all this time and I was doing a course online, which, I know for a lot of people, COVID was a very difficult time period, but for me, it was like the best. It was my first pregnancy. I got to stay at home and work from home, and I had all this extra time. And then once I got certified, I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. I'll kind of do it on the side. I'll see if people are like interested.
What did you get certified in specifically?
I'm a certified nutrition coach specializing in women's hormonal health and fertility.
Wow.
So I was like, let me just see. I don't know. We'll just see like what happens with it. And I was still, again, like very much planning on teaching full time and maybe doing this on the side as a hobby. And it just kept like demands kept going up and more people were asking me for things. And I was also now like making content about it. And I launched a website. I had a blog with all these recipes where I would, write so much for every recipe. This is the nutrition content and this is how it affects your hormones. And people were just like, we want more. So at a certain point, it got to the place where I was like, I think this is really what I'm meant to do. I had also at this time said, I know teaching is not forever. Let me apply to do my master's in psychology. And again, I'm a very I go on this path, and higher education was very important to me. And as I was applying, which for people who don't know, the process of applying to psychology masters in Israel, I don't know if you ever looked into that route. It is extremely competitive. It's very hard. It's very demanding.
It's one of the hardest things to get into.
It's very hard to get into here, which I know also is not the case in the States. It's just a different system. But I ended up getting into my master's in psychology, and I had to give them an answer of do I want to go next year? And I was like, my gut is telling me no, that's not the right path for me. And I really want to pursue this nutrition thing. But again, as a hobby on the side, up until a certain point when I said, I really think this is what I'm meant to be doing. I think this is my mission on earth. It's why I went through what I did, is so that I could teach other women about this. And since I started working, also, it's been very healing for me and just amazing. And I'm so grateful every day to do what I do, to see so many women who are also struggling with very similar or sometimes different stories around struggling with their fertility, struggling with irregular cycles, just feeling like their health is completely out of control, and often being told there's nothing they could do, they're fine, everything is normal. The conventional medical system has often disappointed them or not really seen what's going on, and then using their own agency in what they choose to do with their diet and lifestyle, choosing nourishing meals, taking care of themselves, working on stress management and sleep and movement in a really wholesome and nourishing way, not in a restrictive way at all, but a really way of taking care of yourself and building up your health, and then seeing them, get pregnant. I have clients now who have, since working with me, they've gotten pregnant with their third kids.
Wow.
To see that and know, I went through all those, that whole time of struggling. It's heartbreaking, and being able to help some people avoid that or cut that shorter is just the most amazing thing. So that is basically why I started it. And, now fast forward 6 years. That's what I do now.
That's amazing. And I know, I know that we met in college, but ever since then, I've been following you, and I've just known whenever any of my friend had mentioned anything related to fertility issues, I'm you need to talk to Lauren. And I just feel that so many people have this trust of you because you have this you're so smart and so knowledgeable about it all. And clearly, like you said, you went through it yourself, and you know exactly what the process is and how to handle it. And it's so empowering. Don't you have your class called the Empowering Path?
Yeah, my program's called the Empowered Path to Pregnancy, because I really do believe, listen, and I get it. When I was in this space, I was I don't care what happens. I don't care about my health or my body. Just get me the baby. I am dying to be a mom. And again, when you also see everyone around you moving forward in that area of life, it's very isolating.
Yeah.
Like you could work, and I would try to work on myself and build myself up. I could get to a place where on my own I was okay. And I could get through the day. And then I'd be at a Shabbat meal where people would talk for 2 hours about what strollers they had, which still, I actually still hate that conversation. I'm like, who cares? They all are just like cars on wheels, chairs on wheels, whatever. Like, who cares? But I think there's something in it that also just triggered me. I'm like, for 2 hours, do you need to talk about this when I'm like sitting here and got a negative pregnancy test yesterday? It killed me. And you're like, how can I be part of the conversation? That was scratching the surface. Then they're talking about, where are you sending your kid next year? Like, I just felt so left out. In addition to the part of like, I really want to go home and forget about other people. I wish I had a baby crawling around that I could like play with and rock and hold and feed. Like, I wanted that so badly. And feeling like I just had no idea what was going on and why it wasn't happening, I felt so out of control. And again, I'm a type A person. I like to feel like I'm in control. Also, as I've gone through this journey, I very much recognize like I am not in control. At the end of the day, it's up to Hashem. And I don't ever like want to come at this from an arrogant place. And I appreciate you saying like, you're so knowledgeable and you know all of this. It's not always so simple. And it's not like diet and lifestyle things are always the answer. And sometimes fertility treatments aren't the answer. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's complex. But there's also a lot we know from a scientific perspective. And I saw when I tried to get pregnant the second time, I basically went into it even before I was like actively trying. I said, okay, I'm going to take 3 months. I already committed to this healthy lifestyle. I changed my lifestyle. I changed the way I ate. But I was like, I'm going to really ramp it up for the next 3 months and like do all the extras. I was doing meditation and I was going to acupuncture and just like taking care of myself. It was the best I've ever felt in my life. Like I look back also on that time before I got pregnant with my second in the best way. And I got pregnant on the first try.
Wow.
And I was like, that's why I want to create this program, because it wasn't just, yes, it happens more quickly. And that was really nice. It was the way I went into that pregnancy being like, I've got this. I trust my body. My body knows what to do. I also know what I'm doing. I'm not just trying on every random day of the month. Like I know how to track ovulation now. That was something nobody taught me about. Like I thought you just ovulate around when you go to the mikvah. Surprise. A lot of people don't do that. Definitely if you have irregular cycles, you're probably not doing that. So like all of these different pieces of knowledge that I had acquired made my journey into pregnancy feel so much better and more empowering. Whereas it used to be like trying to get pregnant gave me more anxiety than anything else in the world, because it's the negative tests and the not knowing and the waiting. And then, thank God now I have 3 kids. Same thing with my third. Like the journey into getting pregnant was so smooth and empowering. And I just felt like, yeah, I've got this. And also, the difference of how much healthier I am at 30 or 31 versus when I was 23 and trying to get pregnant. Like we hear so much about age and fertility, and it's harder as you get older. And there is definitely truth to that, especially after a certain age, that fertility can decline. But also you can be really young, and if your health is not in a good place, that might affect your fertility. And like, again, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know all these things about how food affects your body. So I found the knowledge really empowering. I've seen with, thank God I've been like just blessed. I've worked with hundreds of women within my one-on-one programs, my coaching programs online. I see how it empowers women to know this information, and it's really life-changing.
Wow, that's incredible. So
Thank
God you've become a mom and you have 3 children. Can you tell me what that's like to be a mom here?
It's really the best. And I don't want to, for anyone who's struggling, like, again, I was in that place. I know it's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I dreamed about forever. And like, thank God, I always say in some ways, I'm glad that I had to wait for it, because I really try every day. I have moments where I'm like, this is just the best. It really is the best.
Wow.
And I know we were also talking offline. I was saying like, I think just mom life in Israel is so special. You go to any cafe on a Tuesday, you see like tons of moms on maternity leave. Someone's feeding their baby, people are breastfeeding, like no one bats an eye about it, which I think is just so nice. Children are really like welcome here in a way that, in some places you don't feel like that. You have to be, okay, like if we're going into a restaurant, you have to, make sure you have all these activities for the kid. And if they cry, we have to run out immediately. Like, I just think, it's such a child-friendly place. It's a great place to be a mom. And it's also something I think about a lot now, is not just, fertility health, but like mental health during motherhood, moms taking care of themselves. I work with a lot of moms who also maybe are not struggling with fertility, but they're like, I feel like I'm falling apart. I'm giving so much to my kids and I'll do anything for them. And I'll spend, 2 hours making the dinner that they like, but I'm eating the crust of bread and the peels of cucumbers because I'm so busy in motherhood. And I think you do see there's like a respect for motherhood here, and overall just like a very healthy culture. It's not to say people don't struggle here. Obviously they do, but even just like the fact that we have paid maternity leave for 3 months. Even as entrepreneurs, you get paid maternity leave, which I was talking to friends in America who are also entrepreneurs there. They're like, what are you talking about? There's just like a lot of things built in here that I do think make motherhood easier. We have childcare paid for by the government starting at 3 years old, you know? So I love all of those aspects, but just for me personally, like, again, this is what I dreamed of. I find the baby phase a little hard, but like the toddler phase, I know some people will not feel this. I love it. I think toddlers are hilarious. Like my kids are hysterical. They make me laugh every day. I have so much fun with them. They're so uninhibited and goofy and weird. Like I could be the weirdest version of myself with my kids.
For sure.
And it's fun. Like I just love that.
Wow. So I know that a lot of your study and your knowledge isn't just about fertility. And I mean, I guess it kind of goes hand in hand, but it's also about the nutrition that comes with it. So, I mean, you grew up in America. I'd love to know what you think the differences are between like living in America and living in Israel in nutrition wise and trying to get pregnant.
Okay. So the standard American diet, like people know at this point, I think again, also maybe pre-COVID, this wasn't talked about, whereas nowadays it is so much more common in just like regular conversation. But the standard American diet has really not done well for a lot of us, including me, which also I didn't end up sharing this before. I also ended up getting diagnosed with diabetes, which I think is important also for people to know, like you can be thin and be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. You could have terrible health with your insulin. And, you know, a lot of that is really related to how we eat. And we see that a lot, just, you know, the culture around food there is very much like, you know, high sugar, high amounts of processed food. It's funny because I work with a lot of women in the States and here, and people will often say like, but it's so much easier in America, especially people who move to Israel. Because like you get things prepackaged and a lot more stuff like cut up. The way you could get fruit in America, it's so different. I'm like, trust me, it's not, because I see the way that the marketing works around food in the States is very confusing. You see so many healthy-ish processed foods now. Like everything's a commodity, you know? So it's like, okay, now we're obsessed with protein. That's the zeitgeist. Okay, we'll make protein pretzels and protein popcorn and all these protein processed snacks. Whereas here, you have less of those kinds of options. And the culture is just much more rooted in like whole natural foods. First of all, Israel's a very proud agricultural society. We get a lot of really good fresh produce. I mean, people who live near like the shuk, they know they're getting the best. Like you can't get fresher and better than that. But if you even just think about like what, I always go back to the foodies. Like what do foodies get excited about here? You go out for breakfast, right? You order the classic Israeli breakfast. What is it? It's eggs and cheeses and yogurt and za'atar and pickled fermented foods. Like all these things that I can look at and say, yeah, that's protein, that's fiber, that's fermented food, that's good for gut health. This is how it impacts, you know, these different pathways in your system. But here it's like, no, that's just what we eat. We eat, you know, for breakfast, we have cottage cheese and Israeli salad. That's just normal. Whereas in America, if you tried to give me a salad for breakfast when I was growing up, I'd be like, get out of here. Where are my Cocoa Pebbles? I need to grab my, you know, chewy granola bar. Like that's just much more commonly how people eat. So there's definitely a cultural difference, I find. And then when it comes to laws around marketing, there's really, really confusing. I mean, in general, there's confusing laws around marketing, but here, you know, they've definitely pushed for more of an effort with, you know, the like red stickers. Anyone who lives here knows there's the red stickers on different foods. If they're high in added sugar, if they're high in like different chemicals, and if they're high in saturated fats. So it's very clear, even in a health food store, like if you go to Nitzat Haduv Devan or Anise or any of these stores, not to call anyone out specifically, but they'll sell a lot of like healthier, also, you know, cookies or crackers or this or that. But it's very clear they still have the red sticker. And you're legally, like, oh, as a mom who cares about, you know, blood sugar a lot and cares for my kids about their blood sugar, because that also really impacts their behavior and well-being and overall health. It's very easy to just spot, you know, things that are high in sugar. I think the marketing and the labeling is a lot more transparent. And just culturally, again, we have so much more like of an affinity to natural foods here. I think especially within the Jewish world. Like I grew up, this is also definitely regional, but for my family, we grew up having, you know, deli roll, pretzel chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I moved to Givat Shmuel, I would always make cranberry crunch. You know what that is?
No.
It's like it's dessert, but to me it was like a side dish growing up. It's like cranberries and apples with like a sugary oats topping. And I remember people who were either not from New York or like my British friends or Australian, they'd be like, why do you have dessert at the meal? I'm like, this is a vegetable to me. And they're like, what do you mean this is dessert? As if I had served chocolate cake at a meal, which I would also think is weird. Like chocolate cake is dessert. But these, you know, especially like Ashkenazi cooking is just, it's a bottle of barbecue sauce or duck sauce or ketchup or 2 cups of brown sugar. Like we just grew up. And again, it's not any fault to like my parents or anyone in particular, but we just grew up. That was the way we ate and it was normal. And that is definitely less common here. And I think overall, you just see people here are living, if you look at the stats, I don't know them offhand, but when you come to all the, you know, big things, cardiovascular disease, cancers, diabetes, a lot of different metabolic issues, you see those rates are much higher in the States than here and most places in Europe. So there's definitely like an overall difference in health.
Okay. And what about IVF in Israel versus America?
So fertility treatments, it's funny. I think a lot of people here are maybe more open to going down that like conventional medical route, which also I always say this is a misconception. I get a lot of people like, I'm sure you're against this. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm pro women and families like having babies however they want to do it. I do think sometimes there's a little bit of a rush to push women into fertility treatments when they don't need it. That was definitely something I experienced and I was very angry about later on. Like, why did you tell me that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant without medical treatments, which is what the doctor literally said to me. They looked at the ultrasound. They're like, you're not going to be able to get pregnant naturally.
Wow.
This is going to be like how you build your family. And I was like, okay, like that's how it is for some people. I guess this is my test in life and this is what it is. But it wasn't true. And for some people that is true. But for me, it wasn't. And there's a lot of women, especially now, we are just seeing rates of infertility are really climbing. And a lot of it has to do with, you know, so many things. It's not just diet. It's also environmental and it's stress and there's so many different pieces and women are getting married later and having kids later. Like there are a lot of pieces to it. But I think a lot of women are being told that this is their only or best option when a lot of times they could also get pregnant naturally. And I think there is a value in that. It's important for humans to be able to reproduce in a natural way. It's not to like shame anyone for their choice to go through fertility treatments. It's just, you know, as like a whole, if we just see more and more people can't get pregnant naturally, that's a problem. Like we need to look at that. One of the nice things in Israel for people who either want to or need to go down that road is that a lot of it is covered here. You also have a lot of laws protecting you in terms of employment. If like days off of work, if you are doing fertility treatments, like you can't be penalized for that. I don't know if it counts as like sick days, but you are protected from taking time off of work if you want to, you know, go through the IVF process. You would have to disclose it to your employer, which is not comfortable. That was also something I was very worried about when starting this process. I was supposed to have to go for monitoring 5 times throughout the month. I'm like, wow. I have to take off of work. I have to tell my boss that. Like, that's not comfortable. And also I worked as a teacher. If I was off, someone else was covering for me. It's not like a hush-hush thing. So I just definitely didn't want to do that. But you are legally protected in order to do things like that. And they cover for up to 2 children, 2 live births, which is, you know, pretty amazing. If someone has like failed IVF cycles, as long as it takes up until you have 2 children, the government covers your treatment cycles, which it can be $10,000 to $20,000 in the United States. It's very, very expensive to go through the process of IVF and, you know, even other fertility treatments. If you don't have insurance covering it, it's very expensive. So that's also something definitely like you definitely see here like a respect for building families and a push in like an institutional way to help people build families. I mean, we could talk about the birth system in Israel, which I'd love think is amazing. I've only ever given birth in Israel, so my only experience is here. But I also, again, I keep saying this. I feel like people don't believe me at this point, but it's really true. In a million years, you would have never thought I would do a natural birth. Like that is really not my personality. Except that I'm very scared of needles. So I was like, I can't get an epidural like that.
Wow.
It's a big needle. Like, no. And everyone's like, no, you're going to want one. You're going to want one. I'm like, no, I really can't. And I wanted a natural birth. And the way that things work here, even my first pregnancy was high risk, but we have a midwife system in Israel where if you go to the hospital to give birth, you have midwives caring for you. It's very different than in the United States where you have a doctor basically like at every birth. You have a much quicker rate of, using medical interventions like induction or C-section, which I also believe, again, obviously do these things when medically necessary, but it has a big effect on women's entrance into motherhood. When your birth does not go as planned, when you have a traumatic birth, when you were really hoping to have, like a certain kind of birth and it ends in an emergency C-section, and all of a sudden now you like have this baby to take care of and you're recovering and your body went through hell. Like that is really hard on you. And obviously people also get C-sections in Israel. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but the rates overall are much lower here. And you really just see, again, there's like a very much a respect for this, just kind of like entrance into motherhood being as easy and smooth as possible. I know I've spoken to a lot of people as I've shared about like my birth stories and different things about that on my podcast. A lot of people reached out to me from the US saying like, I really wanted a natural hospital birth because also I'm not a home birth girl. Like that's not for me either. I was like natural birth, but in the hospital. So I have all the options if I want. And I had people telling me my doctor wouldn't let me deliver in that position. I'm like, what? Excuse me? Like you have to push and someone else is telling you you can't get in like, do they know you're about to have a baby? Like that's crazy. And I kept hearing that over and over, or a lot of people saying, they don't let me go past 39 weeks because of this and that. They say I have to get induced, which it's so much less common here. I have a lot of friends who are like overdue. They want to get induced. They're like, please give me the induction. And they're like, no, but everything is fine. The baby's fine. We're going to wait another couple of days, come back in a few days. It's much less pushy. And again, I know sometimes people like get the baby out. But I think it's a very different entrance into motherhood when you have this midwife system through the hospital. You have paid maternity leave. You have so much more time to like establish yourself as a mom before thinking about if and when you're going back to work. Even aside from what's considered paid, you see a lot more people taking off, 6 months to a year. Like it's just, that's very much, I would say, part of the culture. Also like not what I chose. I was like, get me back to work. I can't wait. I'm like in my business building era. And I loved that for me. But for so many women, they're taking off, a long time. It makes it then much easier. Do you want to try breastfeeding? Well, if you have your baby in the hospital, you're like, I'm back to work in 6 weeks. Like I have to figure out pumping and I have to regulate my milk supply. I have clients also who ask me, do you have any advice? I'm going back to work. They're 4 weeks postpartum. I'm going back to work in 2 weeks. Do you have advice? And I'm like, that's so hard. And I don't know anyone here who did that. And you should my advice is you should rest, and they can't. Like sometimes you can't, you need to go back to work for financial reasons, but that is so hard. And that takes a toll on women's health. And again, like maybe they just had a baby, but then when they're trying to think about when are they ready for the next one, your body's been through a lot. You haven't recovered properly. Right. You're so depleted from that experience. And it bleeds into many other areas, which then also all comes back to mental health. Because when we're physically not in a great place, it's very hard to mentally be in a good place. And I see that play out a lot for people, and it's hard.
Yeah. And I think that especially that I've seen I think Israel takes children and babies and pregnancy extremely seriously in a way that like they really weigh everything, at least in my experiences. Like if there's ever like a thing in any of my pregnancies that have been at least like a little bit questionable, like they have been on top of it. And if there's something that's not that, that like is probably fine, then they're not going to worry me. Like they're like, oh, it's really totally fine. And if it isn't, then they make sure to let you know. And I really just respect that in general when it comes to not just pregnancy, but with my kids. I see that with anything with them. I've seen them be so on top of any problem that they've had. And I think it's just really the culture of like, thank God, like there is so many births in Israel. There's so many kids in Israel. Like, and it's such like a kind of like, we're all kind of like baby machines. And I know that since the war, we've been in like a baby boom. Like it's been really crazy that everyone just wants to have more and more kids. It's really beautiful and it's amazing. And I think that it kind of says a lot about Israel and the whole system and how Israel handles it and how hospitals and birthing, like the birthing units are becoming even bigger. They're expanding them because there's so many births.
Yeah, I forgot what the stats are, but I've seen it before that like, I don't know, per family here, the birth rate is just like, it's so high. And you see also, in the US, again, probably less in the Jewish world, maybe sometimes also in the Jewish world, I don't know, but like it's declining and it's crazy here. You definitely don't feel that. It's like life is booming, babies are booming, and that's just part of life here.
Yeah. And like you said, also the culture for afterwards, like the kids are really just welcome anywhere. And it's just beautiful. So like you said, I think 6 years ago now, you started a business in Israel.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about how, like, practically you started it? Because I know that there's so many people in Israel. I feel like especially is just the startup nation. Like, there's so many, and Carme Gat, where I live, there, everyone has a side hustle. Like, everyone
Really?
has something.
That's
Like,
so funny.
every Sunday, everyone's advertising something that they do, and they're just like, yes, this is everyone has a business. So I'm so curious if you could just, I mean, I guess from like a business perspective, talk me through how you started it.
So when I started, again, it really came very naturally, and I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I didn't even have like a 1-week plan. I just kind of felt like very passionate, and I definitely felt a need and I guess a calling to share this with women if they, needed it or wanted it. And the response was really positive. So it was just kind of like figuring things out as I go. And that's what I always tell people who want to start a business. If you're really passionate about it, you will figure it out. I think in general with life in Israel, there's a little bit of like, you just figure it out kind of attitude.
You just go for it.
But when I started, again, it was like a little bit here, a little bit there. I, at the time, again, was working full time. So I would take on a client like, as soon as I finished work, and then I would do evening hours. And I definitely had, especially in the first 4 years, more of like a hustle. Because at a certain point I was working 2 jobs and I had a daughter and I was like breastfeeding and pumping and just doing a million things. I look back on that, I'm like, what was it? I don't even know how I did that. There was no work-life balance. But especially in the beginning when you have like the new fresh passion for the business, it's not that I'm not passionate about it anymore, but like it's less of a wildfire. It's a lot more contained.
You have a routine.
Yeah. And I've like learned how to balance things much better. But at that time I was like, I don't care. I don't need sleep. Like I can go all the time. I worked every day, crazy hours, was constantly working. And as, things would like progress, especially in Israel, like there is, proper ways to do it, but there's so many people doing it. I found also just the networking here with other entrepreneurs, specifically female entrepreneurs, was amazing. Just like a really great community of awesome women doing awesome things. And I'm sure there's also like great guys doing great things. I'm just like, I do women's health. Like, I kind of stay
in your lane
in my 4 corners of like that area. But I felt like people were just so friendly, so helpful. I had so many questions in the beginning on so many like different parts of it. Definitely the business of like, how do I grow and reach more people, and with marketing things, but then also on the accounting side, it can be really confusing and overwhelming when you're trying to do stuff in a different language. And there were so many people who were just so happy to help and really took the time to explain things. And
I really feel like everyone wants everyone else to be successful here. Like, I feel like no one sees, at least in my lane, like for me doing social media and marketing, like there's so many people I feel like in my field. And like, the number one way I got clients in the beginning was because people recommended me. Like my colleagues recommended me.
That's so nice.
Like, I feel like it's just such a culture here of like being like, of really just like helping the other person.
Yeah. And the truth is I work from home, but there are definitely days I'm like, I have to go sit in like a coffee shop, or I go out work from Sarona in Tel Aviv, because there's an energy there that's just like, we're building things and people are like moving and grooving. And I think sometimes also people could have this view, maybe less now, but like back in the day for sure, of, Israel with the camels and on the kibbutzim, and like that also exists. But there's also very much this culture of like, people who are really creative and smart and trying to do interesting things and start things, and like it's really fun. So I didn't expect, honestly, the business part to be fun. I thought that would just be a huge challenge. Like I'm passionate about health and I'm passionate about education, but I don't know how to do A, B, or C when it comes to business. And I really learned as time went on. And as like everything's began to, grow and evolve. And then I've had more kids. Again, I've had to figure out what works best for me and my family. It also definitely helps that part of my job is I'm constantly talking about health. So I'm like, you need to practice what you preach, because people can sniff out when you're not authentic. And you see it a lot online. People who are like, preaching all this stuff about health, and then 2 weeks later, they come out, with this big confession of like, this has been the hardest year of my life. I worked myself into the ground and I've actually been struggling. I'm like, who wants to learn from someone who doesn't take good care of themselves? So
doesn't take their own advice.
Yeah. So that I would say is definitely important to me. And like, I really schedule my work around my life, and I spend a lot of time taking care of myself. I do it shamelessly. I think it's important for women to say that. Like, it's important for me to have time to eat healthy meals and cook and exercise and go to bed at 9. And also like moms also are so good with time. I think it forces you to get better with time. So like with each kid, I've learned to squeeze more stuff into less time and you just do it. And it's great.
I just feel like it's so hard. Like when you're balancing your kids and everything, like obviously like people are stay-at-home moms and people are stay-at-home wives and while their kids are gone. And I think like you could seriously have a full-time job of just making healthy food, exercising, making sure your kids have healthy food, like making sure your house is clean. Like how do you balance it all?
So first of all, I also think I'm pretty good at knowing like what balls can drop. My house is not always clean unless I have cleaning help. And that's fine with me. Like I always say, if I clean up, what does it matter? My kids are 1, 3, and 5. I could spend 2 hours cleaning up and organizing their toys. They could ruin it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So to me, like that's just not a great use of my time. If I work out for 45 minutes, they can't take that away from me. Like I did that. If I go to sleep early, they try to take it away from me. They wake me up, but like at least I went to bed early and I can handle it better. So part of it is, again, knowing what to prioritize. I definitely see it in my family, and I think it's true in most families, that when the mom and the wife takes really good care of herself, that only has positive ripple effects to the rest of the family.
Yeah.
So sometimes women also struggle with the idea of like, is it selfish if I take that time for myself? Or, if I want to take extra time, then like the kids, if my husband does bedtime or he does this, it's not going to be as whatever. What if I need a babysitter to do that? Like, you don't have to do everything. And being able to outsource things, I think is actually really good for your family. It's good for you to also know you deserve to be taken care of. And if you don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
I think it sends a very important message to children also to see like, no, mommy can take care of herself. And I'm sitting down for dinner now. You've called my name 35 times to like get random things that you can, but no, like it's okay. I can sit. I think again that when you take care of yourself from a place of self-respect, other people respect it, including your spouse and your kids, I think that's really important. So it is, carving out and prioritizing and protecting that time. But also, I acknowledge I work with a lot of people who have demanding schedules, whether they're in medical school or they're nurses or, they're working in some kind of like finance job where they have crazy hours. And I've seen it. If you care, if you want it, you'll make it happen. Yeah. I've worked with a lot of women also who don't work, which is, if that's for you, like that's awesome, who really struggle to find the time and the bandwidth. I've worked with people who have full-time help, full-time nannies and housekeepers. And like, it's not really a time issue for most people. It really is like a decision to mentally commit and honor and prioritize. And yes, some days I'm making 5, 15, 20-minute meals. I'm not going full on gourmet because I do have a lot of things going on in my life. Sometimes like the amount of time will be different, but the commitment to taking care of yourself, I think it's a little bit of like a crutch that a lot of people say, oh, but I don't have time. Right. And then you get to opt out of it because it's hard. It's hard to decide, no, I don't want to sit and scroll on my phone for the next half hour. That's hard. Like it is fun in a certain sense, even though we know long-term, we don't feel great from sitting and scrolling on our phones. Like it's easy and you get a little dopamine hit and then you don't have to really work so hard. It's hard to go to the gym and push yourself in a workout class and say, I really want to get stronger and be uncomfortable for a short amount of time in order to do that. So it's hard. And I think if you're willing to commit to it, you will find the time. And that's a big thing I work with women on of like, how do we actually find the time in the schedule? Yes, sometimes you need help with strategizing how to do it, but usually we can find some time.
How do you do it? Like how did you create like your schedules? Like how did you create your routine?
Well, I'll tell you also, when I first started working full-time as a nutrition coach, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm about to quit my full-time job. Like I will have the most time. I'll do yoga every day. I'm going to have 8 hours freed up.
Right.
And I didn't. I was like really struggling for the first 6 months to figure out a routine and a rhythm. I was like, I'm so distracted. Everything feels so chaotic. I did not have a good schedule. And it really took time of having it not work for me in order to see like, wait a second, I actually need to, again, schedule time in. I love Google Calendar. I'm just a big fan of Google Calendar. I started putting that in. I was like, people would say, okay, the best time for me to meet is like 9 a.m. Let's say I had a client who said that. I was like, okay, I would take people whenever they wanted. And at a certain point, I was like, I don't work out if it's not in the morning. It doesn't happen. So if it's not happening in the morning, like, what am I doing? And I started saying, oh, I only take calls at 10 a.m. And I'll go. No one cares if I show up. I'm in my, sweaty workout clothes, a baseball cap. Like I'll show up to a call like that. It's okay. But I started saying like, I only take calls after a certain time because I need to exercise in the morning.
Right.
And I wake up early sometimes to make sure I have breakfast. I schedule time in. There was also a point where I was like, I'm not eating lunch. And I'm not a meal skipper. I love eating. Like I'm a foodie. I'm not fun when I'm hangry. So I was like, why is that not happening? I would look at my schedule. It was packed with a billion things from, client meetings and business meetings and content creation. Like all this stuff takes time. And I was like, well, what if I start with, I block out time to prep my lunch? That could be 5 minutes. Like I meal prep usually at the beginning of the week. So putting together the lunch takes 5 minutes and then eating it could take, sometimes it's 15 minutes in front of the computer. Like I'll be honest, I have those days, but I schedule that time. And if someone's like, oh, but really only this works for me, I'm like, it's not on the calendar. And now I do everything. Things are so automated at this point in my business. Like you won't find those things on my Calendly. If you're trying to schedule a call with me, it's only at times that work around my schedule. If I happens to be this week, like I just have a lot going on in the evenings with friends. So like I blocked out any evenings that I do work. I'm like, no, I'm not doing work calls this week because I have other things going on other nights. Like I need to go to bed early on the other night. So it's taken time, but I've developed a system where I'm like, I plan those things first. I also really believe this as a business owner, even if you're not in the health space, you are your most valuable business asset. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're someone who uses your brain in your business, like if I don't sleep, if I'm not eating well, I don't operate at the highest level. Right. So you think you're saving time by skipping lunch or staying up late to work. You're not. You're costing yourself time and efficiency the next day. And I could tell you for sure, like let's say with podcasting, if I have a night where I didn't sleep, I don't even try to get on the mic. The podcast will be so fragmented and I don't sound articulate. I'm like, who wants to listen to that? Not me. Right. So it is so much better for me to say, yeah, I'm not going to try to podcast at 10 p.m. at night. Let me go to bed early. Even if it means waking up early or finding the time somewhere else. When I take good care of myself, like my business thrives. And I think most people who try that out, even if you think you don't have the time, like when you do it, you see it. You do, and you thrive in a lot of different areas. So it's worth the time.
So to me, like I love what you're saying about the routine. What I feel like the biggest challenge for me and maybe for other people is that I can spend so long like creating this whole routine, creating this whole situation, but then like something will happen. Like your kid gets sick or there's a war or you forgot about an appointment that you had. And then it's like, what do you do with that? And then you get all messed up. And then how are you supposed to handle that?
So that's also something I've been thinking about a lot, and I talk a lot about with the women who I work with, kinds of creating lives where we have a little bit more margin for error. That's what I heard someone else call it who I spoke to on my podcast, and I just liked that phrase of having more room in the margins that like if things do go a little bit sideways, it shouldn't throw off your whole life. Let's say if like your kid is homesick. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to look different for every person depending on what their career looks like, what their work schedule looks like. I know how I've kind of been able to do it in my life, the way that I started scheduling things and even just like the level of pressure that I put on myself, which is, I come first, taking care of my health comes first and my kids come first. And so I used to feel like, oh my gosh, if I have to reschedule something because of my kids, like how could I disappoint people? And I feel so bad. And I take it when people trust me with their health and they're like waiting to meet with me to hear what I have to say or my advice, like I take that really seriously. Yeah. And at the same time, I'm like, it's also okay if we move it to tomorrow. Uh-huh. And the world is not going to end. And also 99, maybe 100% of the time, everyone's been okay with it. So part of it was like, I would put this pressure on myself, but I said the schedule has to be this. I can't change it. Mm-hmm. And learning to be a little bit more okay with being flexible. For me, part of it has just been like, as I have more kids, I've become more flexible by force. Like I didn't choose to, but they've made me be more flexible. In terms of the war, also, you just priorities shift. And it was like, we were in survival mode and I cut out anything that was not essential in my business, any email marketing, any social media marketing, my podcast, like all of those things, which I love and are important in my business. I said, they're not high priority. Cut those things out. The only thing I need to do right now is like support the women that I work with and show up for calls and arrange childcare for those hours. And that's what I did. Which definitely like, my business took a hit to a certain degree, but I also learned so much from that time. I was like, maybe I don't need to be doing all of those things at the level I was doing them before.
Interesting.
Like I spent probably 2 hours a week, maybe sometimes more on email marketing. I haven't done it since the war started in March.
Oh, wow.
I was like, you know what? I spend so much time. I could use that time in other ways. We just also have like a lot going on as a family now. We're preparing to move, which is very exciting. And like I
We're
also
very
know this
excited.
off camera, like we bought a home, which is amazing and just the biggest blessing, but it's time consuming. There's a lot that goes
Right.
into it. So I was like, what if I just don't go back to that? Let me see what happens. I experimented for a month. This was like one of my best business months. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I
Wow.
also tell myself, you need to do this and you need to do that. I've been posting a lot less on social media and spending a lot less time on it. And again, like I'm okay. So sometimes I think part of it is learning. And I also totally acknowledge like that's because I was definitely hustling for a couple of years and got my business to a point where so much operates on like word of mouth and recommendations from former clients, where I don't need to be making like a new Instagram post every day. I have people reach out to me every day who are like
Wow.
interested, which again, thank God. But now that it's at that point, I'm able to also kind of
Right.
trim the things that don't need to be done, which gives me a lot more flexibility. And, you know, again, I think it just comes down to being really good at like knowing what the priorities are and finding your flow. And I don't want to give this false impression that like I always have it all together. Obviously, there are days where I'm like, oh my God, I totally like, I don't know what's for dinner for my kids today. Like there are days where I just don't feel like I thrive as a mom, or I dropped a ball in something in business. It's definitely not perfect, but everyone just has to find their flow. And I think it's also okay to say there are weeks where like I'm pushing a little bit harder on the gas pedal for work, and other weeks where I'm just so much more present with my family. You don't have to have the perfect combination every single day. I think that's really unrealistic.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for being here. I learned so much from you, and I know that I'm going to try and change my lifestyle now to try and prioritize health, because it's so important, and I just so appreciate all of your knowledge, and it's really
Thank
such an
you.
honor. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.